Again? All right, try this again. All right, Tzahorayim Tovim, Shabbat Shalom. Baruch haba, welcome to our beginner's Hebrew class. This is our third class, and today we'll be taking up the letter Bet, which is the second letter of the aleph Bet. All right, so on our next screen, if you would, our next screen, we have the first three letters, which we shared with you last week. So the first is Aleph, the second is Bet, and the third is Gimel. By the way, how many of you did your homework? Anybody? Okay, so the homework was, so if you don't do your homework, you're not going to pass the class. All right? Basically, how do I know you don't pass the class? Well, you won't be able to read the Hebrew because you won't be able to remember what the letters are. All right? So the reason why I'm having you to do what you're doing, what I'm having you to do is so that to help you get it in your brain, to help you remember. Just like first grade, when they make you do a whole list of A's, right? Capital A, capital A, capital A. And then little a, little a, little a. That's what this is about, to get it into your brain. So your homework assignment was to, every day, to write on the sheet of paper, both sides, all of the alephs. Okay? So this week's homework assignment is to do the same thing, okay, with Bet. And then I want you to do another sheet that says that does aleph, bet, aleph, bet, aleph, bet. All right? And so basically in doing this, you're using your eye, you're using your hand, you're using your brain to store this information, to record this information, to help you to remember it. Okay? So that's what this is about. So I need you to do the work, do the homework, to help me to help you. Okay? Yes, you can ask questions. You have a question? This is a class. Do you have a question?
Is that A, B, C?
No. It's A, B, G. A, B, G. Gimel. Okay. There. Huh? Yes, we'll get to that. All right, so C comes later, but it's not the same. There is no C. Yes, it's always a K sound. It's always a K. It's no C, it's a K. All right. Okay. How do you spell okay? Vav and kaf. A vav, because vav is O, and a kaf. Okay? Okay? Okay. Okay, so aleph. No, back. Keep it with me. Aleph. Bet. Gimel. Again. Aleph. Bet. Gimel. With me. Aleph. Bet. Gimel. Again. Aleph. Bet. Gimel. Aleph. Bet. Gimel. Aleph. Bet. Gimel. All right. So, Aleph, remember, Aleph has the significance of strength, strong as an ox. And its original was an ox head with the horns, okay? And it looks like the letter A. Can you go back to that one? It's back like two, 3 slides. You should just press the down button or something. Back more. Back. Back. Back, 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 back. Back. No, too far back. You went too far. Just click the slide. Can you click the slide? Keep going. I want the aleph page. There you go. All right. So this is the do the next one, please. Put it all up. Okay, so this is what we call the paleograph. The paleograph or paleoglyph, either way, is a picture writing. It's writing with pictures. Okay, Egyptian. When you look at Egyptian writing, they use the hieroglyphs, and these are paleoglyphs. Paleo meaning old, ancient. Okay, so like a paleo diet. So these are paleoglyphs or paleographs. Graph means to write. These are the letters that Moshe would have used. You'll see the one in Beit. But to show you that aleph, the significance of aleph, you see the ox head there, right here. This is an ox head. Looks kind of like a goat head right here. Okay, it's an ox head. It's a sideways letter A. That's where we get our letter A from. Okay, and so here you have the ears, here you have the horn, and here you have the face. Okay, so go back to the three letters, Emilio, David. There you go. So aleph. The next one is beit. Beit. And then the next one, beit, as you'll see in just a minute, as we'll show you in just a minute, is house, bayit. And so the significance of the beit, the second one, is house. The significance of the third one, gimel, means camel. Okay, gimel means camel. And that's where we get our word camel from, is gimel. So, next slide. Keep going. So, these are the two. There are two ways to write the beit. And they are pronounced differently. The first one is called the beit, and the second one is called the veit, with a V. The. So say beit with a B. Beit. Beit. Right here. Beit. And the second one is veit. The second one is veit. Notice that there's a difference. Okay? Just take the patach off of there and just look at the beit, and it's got a dot in the middle of it, and the other one, the second one, has no dot in the middle of it. Don't worry about this right here. That's nothing. But so the first one has a dot in the middle of it. They are called labials. We call these labials. Everyone say labial? A labial because it comes off of the lips. Okay? So ba. The sound is made with the lips. Remember that aleph, what's the sound of aleph? What is the sound of aleph? Has no sound. Aleph is silent, has no sound. The sound of the beit is b, as in like the B letter, b, as in boy, or bad, or bait, or bagel. All right? The second one is the same, except for it's with the teeth instead of the lips. It's with the teeth. It's the sound of a V. The veit. Veit. Now, this is why it is important to know how to read Hebrew, and not just the transliteration. Because there are two letters that make a V sound. The Vav is the original V sound. But the Beit in this form also makes a V sound. V. So when you're reading it, you will say V, not B. So when you're reading the transliteration, what is a transliteration? It is the Hebrew but written with English letters, like we're doing the liturgy. When you see a V there, is it a Beit or is it a Vav? Because remember that every letter carries its own significance, its own definition into the word. So if you're spelling it with a, what's the difference? Well, if you're spelling it with a B or with a V, if you're spelling it with a Beit or with a Vav, well, it changes the significance of the word. So it's important for you to know, is this a Beit or is this a Vav? And we'll come to a Vav in a few weeks. It's the sixth letter. And we're on the second, so in about 4 weeks we're going to come to Vav. But if you're reading the transliteration, that is the English letter, you're reading Hebrew, but you're using the English letters, like we do in the liturgy, then it just appears to you as a V. And you don't know whether it's a beit or a vav, unless you already know the Hebrew, you know the word. Okay, so next point. This is the paleograph, or the paleoglyph, and is that of a Bedouin's tent, as in a diagram. This is a tent. Okay? Like Abraham and Sarah, Yaakov, they all lived in tents. So this is a tent. How's this a tent? This is the opening. This is the bedroom. This is the sleeping area. This is the opening right here. This is the doorway. And this is the public area. So you would come into the tent, and this whole area here, it would be covered with a roof, and it would have a wall, and a wall this way, and you would have an opening here. And this would be where you would meet your neighbors or what have you. And then there would be a curtain along this wall here, and behind that would be the pillows and what have you, the rugs, the carpets on the ground to make the bed. And that would be the bedroom. That would be the private area. So this would be the public area. You have a wall and a wall. The entrance here in the front, you come in. There's a wall, you come in. There's a wall and a wall. And this is where the public would be. Where you would meet your neighbors, where you would invite people to come for dinner, lunch, supper, what have you. And then back here, this is the private area. So this is where Abraham sat. This is where Abraham sat after he had been circumcised, after he circumcised himself, and he saw the three strangers. He was sitting in the doorway of his tent to invite people in. Even in his pain, he had compassion on the travelers. He would invite them in for some water, whatever, and he would testify to them about Hashem. And that's why he was sitting in the door of the tent. So the beit, and the reason why the tent is because beit means house. Beit means house. Now we say beit. Technically, the word for house is bayit. But as in all languages, things get smashed together over time. So it just simply is beit. All right, next. Beit's number is the number 2. Aleph is number 1. Beit is number 2. Yes?
I thought the other one was a 6.
Where?
The previous letter.
No, Aleph. Yes. What I shared with you is that the Aleph, the slash in the Aleph. Go back to Aleph, if you could, please. Just go back to one slide. The one with the 3 letters in it. There. What I shared with you is that the Aleph, that this slash here is a Vav that's on the side, and Vav is the letter 6. So it's 6 and 10 and 10. Okay? So it's 26, which equals Yud Ke Vav He, is also 26. Okay? So let's go back to the beit. All right. So its number is 2. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, next. All right. So the dot in the middle. The dot in the middle is called a dagesh. Everyone say dagesh. Beit is not the only letter to take a dagesh. There are several letters that will take a dagesh. In fact, most of them actually can. All right? So next, the dagesh, what the dagesh does, it's the dot in the middle of a consonant, and it hardens. Next, it hardens the sound. It hardens the letter. So B is the hard, V is the soft. B, off of the lips, B. That's the hard. That's the dagesh. The is soft without the dagesh. Okay? So in English, if you're writing this as an English transliteration, the dagesh will double the letter. So if you have a kaf with a dagesh in it, as in Sukkot, it will be written as in Hebrew, Samech Vav Kaf Tav. In Hebrew, in English, it will be written S-U-K-K-O-T, Sukkot. Using the Beit Dagesh, it's called the Beit Dagesh. Say Beit Dagesh, telling you it's a beit with a dot in the middle of it. What is a word that has a Beit Dagesh in it? Shabbat. S-H-A-B-B-A-T. A word related to Shabbat, which we're coming to in a couple of days, a Moed, a festival related to Shabbat. It comes from the same root word, but it does not have a dagesh in it, is Shavuot. Sheva. Say Sheva. That's where we get our word Shabbat from. But it's Sheva is a Shin Vet Tav. Shin Vet Tav. Vet. Without the dagesh. Shin Vet. Shavua. Sheva. Means 7. So Shabbat is the 7th. Seven days. Okay, so how do you spell Shabbat in Hebrew? Shin Bet Tav. But it's Shin Bet Dagesh with a dot in the middle of it. If it does not have the dagesh in the middle of it, then it's going to sound like a V. Now, by the way, you do this in Spanish as well. The B and the V, they're oftentimes crossed. So like where the B appears in the word or how fast you're speaking and those kinds of things, honestly, just being lazy about pronunciation, many times people will pronounce their B's in Spanish like V's. So it shouldn't be too difficult to understand what's going on here. But here it's written down this way. In Spanish, it's not written down that way. Okay? So when I was growing up, oftentimes I was called Bolillo. B-O-L-L-I-L-O. Bolillo. Is that right? B-I-O-L-I-L-L-O. Bolillo. All right? So, but sometimes it's bolillo, but sometimes some people would say volillo. Okay? So whether it's a hard B or a soft V or a V. So hard or soft, hard and soft, okay? All right, so Shabbat will have a dagesh in it. And I'll show you in just a little bit. All right, so the letter Beit versus Veit, let's see. Usually it will be the Beit dagesh if it's at the beginning of a word. It will be hard. So if you see the Beit at the beginning of the word, it almost always will have the dagesh in it, telling you that it's hard. It's going to be a hard B. If it comes in the middle of a word, it will usually sound like a V, vet, like Shavuot. So you have Bereshit, Bereshit, in the beginning. Be is Beit Dagesh, and it means in. We'll talk about that. It means in. Bereshit. In the beginning. So when it appears at the beginning of a word, also when it is representing the word in or within, inside of something. Why does so oftentimes you'll see the beit at the beginning of a word. You'll see a beit and then the three-letter consonant or the three-letter root. And the b at the beginning, so it's b, it's beit, resh, shin, tav. Bereshit. Bereshit. So here, so the b means inside. Why? Because it's a house. You live inside the house. You see the relationship inside, within. You're sheltered, covering. So within. Are you with me? Are you standing with me here? All right? So when you see the beit at the beginning of the word, oftentimes that's the word in or inside or within. So we today are the 35th day of the counting of the Omer. Today is Malchut Beshebe Chod. Malchut, kingdom, be, in, shebe, within, inside of, hod, humility. So beshebe, so if you're reading it as an English transliteration, like the liturgy, it would say beshebe would be spelled B, S-H-E-B-E, beshebe. Everyone say beshebe. And that means within. So you have Malchut, the Sephirah Malchut within the Sephirah of Hod. So it's Malchut Beshebe Hod. Okay? If you're counting the Omer, you're following counting the Omer apps, you'll see it written that way. Malchut Beshebe Hod. Yesterday was Hod Beshebe Hod. Humility within humility. Gevurah Beshebe Hod. Okay, Tiferet b'shebe chod. So b'shebe, within. So the B means inside, within. So when you're reading and you see the B, usually in the transliteration, it will be a B with an apostrophe after it. As in Bereshit. You'll see in a little bit. Bereshit. B apostrophe Reshit. Because Bereshit does not mean beginning. Bereshit means in the beginning. Reshit means beginning. Reshit, everyone say Reshit, means beginning. So the very first verse of the scripture of Torah, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Bereshit. In the beginning. Okay. So usually it's going to be a V sound in the middle of the word. If the beit appears in the middle of the word, it's going to be a V sound. Always a V. It will always be a V if directly preceded or followed by another labial consonant. So here you have uvkol. This is a vav. Can you see this? I know it's kind of small down here. Can you see that? It's a vav, beit, kaf, lamed. And you pronounce that right here, uvkol. Because this is another labial, even though it's u, because it's a vav. So if it is directly preceded or followed by another labial consonant, so this is a labial, so it's going to be uv. It's not going to be ubkol, it's going to be uvkol. Do you understand what I'm saying here? This word, this letter here is u. This is the vav. The vet. The vav is u. The bet is vet, the kaf, and the lamed. K, ol. So, uvkol. Uvkol. And all. Uvkol Yisrael. And all of Israel. So many times in the liturgy, we'll come across the phrase, Uvkol Yisrael v'inlu Amen. To bless us and to bless all of Israel, and we all say, Amen. All right, so here you see it in English transliteration. These are transliterations. Go ahead with both of them. All right, so here you see the Hebrew. I need a pointer. Thank you. I'll use our wheat. All right. So this first one here, tell me what does that say? Shabbat. This is Shabbat in Hebrew. Shin bet tav. Notice that it is a bet what? Bet dagesh. Why? What's the dagesh? The dot in the middle. It makes it hard. So it is spelled Shin Bet Dagesh Tav. How many bets are there? No. How many bets are there? One. There's one bet. But how many B's does it count as? Two. Shabbat. So this is Sh-A-B-A-T. You see how we did that? Look, do it with me. Sh. That's the letter, that's a vowel. A. So Sh-A-B-A-T. Shabbat. 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 Now, what I'm showing you is the difference between the dagesh, the bet dagesh, and the vet. The vet is the bet without dagesh. Yes. Okay. Oh. So, the next word is not Abraham. It's not with a B because there's no bet dagesh. Remember, our rule here is always a V if directly preceded or followed by another labial consonant, even at the beginning of the word. Excuse me, right here. Usually a V sound in the middle of the word. So where does this appear? In the middle or at the ends? It's in the middle. Okay? So it is Avraham. 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 Not Abraham. Not Avram. Abram. Avram. No, Avram. A V sound. It's the bet. So here you have it. Aleph, bet, resh, he, mem. And that's a mem sopi. We'll get into that later. So Aleph, bet, resh, he, mem. So what's the sound of the Aleph? Silent, so it takes its vowel. Here's the vowel. I told you what that vowel is right here. Ah. So the Aleph is silent, but it takes the vowel. Ah. The. Okay, now this semicolon here, or this colon-looking thing here, is called a petach, and it means stop, no sound. So it's av. There's no vowel sound there. It's just av. And then you go immediately into the next vowel. So whenever you see that colon symbol called petach, it means it's to stop. No sound. Okay? So av, the resh, from the back of the throat. Like you're growling like Tony the Tiger. They're great. Not Spanish R, but from the back. All right? So it's Avraham. It's from the back of the throat. Yes. You're rolling your tongue still, but from the back instead of from the front. Okay, the Spanish R, you're rolling it from the front. Rrr. Okay, the Hebrew R, you roll it from the back. Rrr. Avraham. And it's almost like you're swallowing the letter. Avraham. Avraham. Yes, you do have to practice. All right, it's something that you practice. Avraham. Avraham. And listen, don't feel bad, because I know people who have been Jews all of their life, and they can't do it. Okay, they either say ra, or they like English, like we're trying to speak Spanish. What's the Spanish word with an R in it? Carmona. All right. Carmona. All right. So I know when you're up from the Northeast or whatever, they don't know how to roll their R's at all for anything. Okay, that's just an R for them. Okay, some of them will do it, but it's with the Spanish R. But we speak Ashkenaz. No, we speak Sephardic. We speak Safar. Safar. Safar is the Hebrew word for Spain. So Safari is the Spanish pronunciation. Literally what it is the Mediterranean pronunciation. From the Jews, from the Hebrew, the Jews speaking Hebrew in the Mediterranean, that's Sephardi. From Safar, from Spain. Meaning from Spain that way. Okay? This is the Hebrew that is spoken in Israel, is Sephardi. Ashkenaz is the Hebrew spoken by the Europeans. So like you can tell an American like a white person trying to speak that didn't grow up trying to speak Spanish. And they don't know how to roll their R's or whatever. Como está usted? You can hear the anglicization of it. Okay, so the same thing is true with Hebrew being spoken by Ashkenazim. These are the European Jews, the Jews of Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Russia, whatever. They have a different accent, a different pronunciation. For one thing, the accent in Ashkenaz, the accent goes at the front of the word. Like tomorrow, yesterday, da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. In the Sephardic enunciation, the accent is at the end of the word. Da-da-da-da, shalom, Shabbat, Reshit, Yaakov, Avraham. It's at the end of the word. Okay? And so a lot of times when you're listening to an Ashkenaz speaker, they'll be making the accent at the front of the word, like you would do in the European languages, like in Spanish and in English and German, although the accent goes at the front. But in the Middle Eastern languages, the accent goes at the end. So, Bereshit Elohim, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Okay, so you'll hear da-ra, 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 rather than da-da, da-da, da-da. You hear the difference. Da-da, da-da, da-da is European. Da-ra, da-ra, da-ra is Middle Eastern. And that's Arabic, Aramaic, Hebrew, those languages. So, Shabbat, but Shabbat with the Dage is spelled with a double B, but it's Avraham. So you have Alif, Vet, Resh, He, Mem. Avraham, 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 Avraham. Now, you need to practice these things, so write it down because you need to practice. It's Shabbat, but it's Avraham. You need to say it with the V. You need to practice pronouncing the words correctly. You need to practice pronouncing the words correctly. And we need to learn consistency. You need to be consistent in the way you pronounce it. This is what my rabbi taught me. If you're going to speak Ashkenaz, if you're going to use Ashkenaz accent, Ashkenaz, then use it all the time. If you're going to use Sephardi, use that all the time. Make up your mind which one you're going to use and then use that. Don't mix the two together because that just confuses everybody. Because if you're speaking Ashkenaz, they will know that you're speaking Ashkenaz. Some of the things are different. For example, the patach, oftentimes. In Ashkenaz, is sounded like an O, sounds like an O. Instead of an A, it's an O. Avroham, Adonoi. Instead of Adonai. It's because of that Bronx accent. That New York accent. But that's actually Ashkenaz. That's European. Okay? So, if you're going to, and like I said, the Ashkenaz will pronounce the Hebrew word the same way you would pronounce it in English, with the accent usually at the beginning, in the first or second syllable. But Sephardi, the accent is almost always on the final syllable. So my rabbi would say, you need to learn to be consistent. You either pronounce it like an Ashkenaz or you pronounce it like a Sephardi. Don't do both. Make up your mind which way you're going to pronounce it and then pronounce it that way consistently. So the reason why I'm telling you that is that it's not Abraham. You need to consistently learn to say, and it comes with practice, Avraham, 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 with a V. Avraham. Avraham, 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 Avraham. Okay, next. So as we discussed, Beit comes from Bayit, and that means house. Next. So the paleo, we did this, is a Bedouin tent. Next. The stronger Beit has a Dagesh. The stronger Beit has a Dagesh. Why? The Dagesh is the strength of the house. The Dagesh is the man of the house. A house without a Dagesh is a weak house. A Beit without a Dagesh is a Beit. It still has some strength, Beit, but it's not as strong as it could be, Beit. So Judaism teaches us through Hebrew that the strong house is a house that has a father, a husband. Now, those of you who are listening online, if you come from a single parent home, you come from a mother-led home, we're not dissing you in any way. But we're going to see in just a minute that God's intention, the strong house, has a man. The strong house has a man. So the Dagesh, you can look at the Dagesh as the man of the home. The man of the house. Next. So notice you have here Aleph, Bet. Aleph plus Bet. What did I tell you the Aleph represents? The significance of Aleph is what? Strength. And Beit is house. So strength plus house equals Av. Father. Abba. When you call him Abba, Abba literally means daddy. Dad. Av means father. Abba, notice it's stronger. It's a bet dagesh. Abba, aleph, bet. Aleph, bet. But with the forget it. With one of these at the bottom of under bet, Abba. It becomes a bet dagesh. Who do you call? What is the difference between padre y papa? What's the difference between father and dad? Okay. Father is more formal. Padre, more formal. Papa is what? Close relationship. Dad. I did not call him father. I called my parent dad. It's a close relationship. So this is true in Hebrew. You say avi, you can say avi, which means avi. When you have the e at the end of a noun, it's first person possessive, means my, avi, my father. Av, father. You have abba, the bet dagesh, signifying that there is a strong relationship. Why? Because the consonant brings its definition, its defining term into the word. So the difference between a vav, a vet, aleph vet, av, father, it's distance. It's not a strong relationship. As opposed to abba, now it's a strong, there's a dagesh in there, strengthening the word because it's a close relationship. It's a strong relationship. Notice that the word Avraham, notice that the first two letters is what? Come on, right here. What is this letter here? What is this letter here? Bet. A. Come on, aleph. Bet. Come on. Work with me here. Aleph. Bet. Aleph. Bet. Aleph. Bet. Notice here. Aleph. Bet. So this means what? So then this means, because Avraham is the father of the nation. Avraham. Am. Right here, the Am is people. He's the father of the people. Resh, you'll get into in a little bit, is the head. Av, father, who is the head of the people. Now remember that his original name was not Avraham, it was Avram. God put the hay in there. Why? Breath. He breathed life into an old man. He also took Sarai and turned her name to Sarah, also with a hey at the end. He breathed life into her, an old lady. And they brought forth a son, Yitzhak. So next. So Ashrit Bet. Ashrit is what we call the modern Hebrew. It's called Ashrit. Okay? We call it modern Hebrew because it's not as old as Paleo Hebrew. But what we call modern Hebrew is over 2,000 years old. But it's called modern Hebrew. The scroll is written in modern Hebrew. It's written in Ashret. So the Ashret Bet is made of 3 vavs connected to form a sukkot. So you have a vav, and a vav. So thank you, Carmen, for the board. So, the bait looks like this, right? Like hangman, when you're playing hangman. Now watch, you need to make sure that it has a tail on it, extending past. Because there's another letter that looks like this, called the kaf, and it doesn't have a tail. And if you're reading, particularly you're reading in a scroll, they're very easy to confuse. So you need to make sure that you're seeing the right thing. So if it's a bait, it's going to have a tail at the end of it. Notice there's a little tail at the end right there. So, what is a bait made of? A bait is made of a vav, and a vav, and a vav. 3 vavs. Remember that the aleph was also made of a slanting vav with a yud and a yud. You see, when you're making a Hebrew letter, you're taking other letters to make the Hebrew letter. Now, I told you last week, what is a vav? The vav represents whom? Its number is what? 6, and 6 is the number of man. Because man was created on the 6th day. So you have 6, watch carefully, plus 6 plus 6. No, but it's not as evil as you think. Because the number that is given to the anti-Mashiach is 666. So it's not the same number. Telling you that anti-Mashiach is going to be a man among men. In other words, he's going to be looked very favorably upon by other men. That's why anti-Mashiach, we have an idea because of our modern understanding of words that anti means to be against. But the original intent of anti, as in antichrist, anti-Mashiach, the original intent of anti does not mean against, means in place of. In place of Mashiach. So Yeshua says that I come and you want to execute me, another will come in my stead, and him you'll accept. Come in my stead, in place of me. The one who comes in place of me, he's the one you're going to accept. But he is evil. But he will come as an angel of light. He will come to the rescue. We're in very, very perilous times today, and the world is looking for someone to come and rescue us. And this is where he will come and present himself as the rescuer of the world. And he will be looked favorably. He will be looked upon favorably. Okay? I won't charge you for that. That's free. So, it has 3 vavs. Okay? It has 3 vavs, being 3 people. Next slide, please. So, if I were to remove any vav, you no longer have a bait. If I were to remove any vav, you no longer have a bait. If I were to remove any vav, you no longer have a bait. Vav means what? Person. If I were to remove any person from the house, I no longer have a true home. It is no longer complete. This, you remove the father, and now you have an incomplete home. Notice where the father goes. The father is the top vav, the roof, the shelter over the house. But you remove him, and your house is no longer complete. You remove the mother. The mother's right here. She's the sidewall. She's what keeps everything safe and secure within the home. She's the wall of the home. You remove the mother, and you no longer have a complete home. You still have the shelter, but you don't have that nurturing protection. The third one is the base, down here at the bottom. You remove the child from the home. The child is the one who extends. That's why the tail passed. It extends. It's the next generation. It's extending the family. I was so thankful. I was in my sick bed on the front porch of our home, going through chemo treatment, when Charity and Richard came in and told me, you're going to be a grandpa with your first grandson. And I was like, wow, that's something to live for. My one and only grandson, my one and only grandson, to keep my family name going. That's the tail. That's the tail. The extension, the continuation of the family to the next generation. But if you remove the child, then you still have an incomplete home. A husband and wife without a child is an incomplete home in Judaism. And there's much written about this. In fact, one of the excuses that Jewish people, the rabbis, use that Yeshua was not Mashiach is that he had no children. He had no wife, he had no children. Because the very first command that God gives to Adam is, be fruitful and multiply. You shall cleave unto your wife, and the two of you shall become one. Echad. The purpose, and this is why all of the sexual deviations are incorrect, are inappropriate, because they do not produce children. In order to produce children, there must be a male and a female. This is Orthodox Judaism. Reform Judaism, they don't care. Do what you want. In Orthodox Judaism, if it circumvents the intent of God, then it is incorrect. So any deviation from what God has stated to us in Torah creates an incomplete home. So this is why, next, this is why women in the Bible prayed so much to have children. You will find women in the Bible pleading with Hashem, with all of their hearts, to have a child. Sarah, the mother of Shmuel. You find these women pleading with God for a child. Why? Because in Judaism, the family is considered to be incomplete without children. It's all about the children. That's why you hear us say that very frequently here. It is all about the children. You say, well, what if I can't have a child? You can adopt. There are ways to have children. If you physically cannot have a child, there are other ways to gain children. Not stealing them, not kidnapping them, legal. You say, am I required to have a child? You are highly encouraged to have children. You're highly encouraged to have children because this is the purpose. This is what it's about. The next generation.
Is that what marriage is such a big
Yes.
among the two?
Yes. Which is, like I said, this is one of the excuses that some of the rabbis use to dismiss Yeshua as Mashiach because he was not married and he had no children. Therefore, they see him as being incomplete. Not understanding that Israel is the wife of Mashiach. And then together they progenerate. They produce offspring. We are the offspring. That is why we take the name, as converts, we take the name Ben Avacham, son of Abraham. Bat Sarah, the daughter of Sarah. Because we are the production, the offspring of the relationship between Yeshua Mashiach and Israel, to go into all the world and to take this good news to all people. Here you have, this is the English, it is not Bethlehem, or I love it, in the South they say Bethlehem. Bethlehem. It is Bet, it is pronounced Bet. There's no th. There's no th, it's T. There is no TH in Hebrew. Ashkenaz, they have that. But in Sephardic Hebrew, there is no TH. It's T. Bet Lechem. Lechem means bread. Bet Lechem. Bet Lechem. And by the way, you have a double segol. Here's a segol and here's a segol. Okay, the E sound, the short E sound. This is one of the rare times when then the first syllable takes, whenever you have a double segol, a consonant and a segol, an E, a consonant and an E, then the first syllable takes the accent. This is the rarity. This is the exclusion, exception to the rule. So in Hebrew, in Sephardic Hebrew, it will be on the final syllable, ta-ta, 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 Bet Avacham, Bet Sarah, Bet Yitzhak, Bet whatever. Here, Bet Lechem. A common word with our tzitzit, the blue, is spelled, the pronunciation is tehelet. Not tehelet, nor tehelet. It's not tehelet. And so sometimes you'll hear people mispronouncing it, saying tehelet. Tehelet, because it's E-L-E-T. Tehelet. T-I-H-E-L-E-T. Tehelet. So when you have a double segol, the enunciation, the pronunciation, goes on the first syllable. Tehelet, the first syllable of the first segol. Tehelet, the enunciation will go on the first segol. Tehelet. The same is true in the tree of life. The Sephirah Tiferet. It's not Tiferet, it's Tiferet, because you have a double segol. You have a double E. T-I-F-E-R-E-T. T-I-F-E. T-F-E-R-E-T. Re. Tiferet. Not Tiferet. Okay? Now, why am I telling you this? Because my rabbi told me you need to be consistent. This is the way you pronounce it, and you need to pronounce it correctly. Practice. Tiferet. Tehelet. Okay? So, lechem. Beit, house. Lechem, bread. Okay? Hamotzi, lechem, min haaretz. Ha-motzi, ha, the, motzi. Lechem mean from ha, the aretz, earth. By the way, we say haaretz because that is awful. Eretz is also segol, segol. Segol, resh, segol, tzav. Eretz. Not eretz, not haaretz, but haaretz. So again, you have the exception. All right? So, Beit Lechem is house of bread. The temple is called the Beit. Say it, Beit Ha-Mikdash. Say it again. Beit Ha-Mikdash. Beit is house. Ha means the, me, of, or from. Now you have Kodesh. No, remember the root. You have a 3-letter root. You always have a 3-letter root. Kav, Dalet, Shin. Kadesh, Kodesh, which means holy. They say Kadosh, 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 Adonai, Savaot. Holy, holy, holy. Thus, Beit, house, Ha, the, me, of, Kadesh, Kadosh, holiness. So when you hear the temple being called Habet Hamikdash, it is being called the house of holiness. Why is it called the house of holiness? Because that's where the ark stood. No. Incorrect. What do you mean incorrect? Because the ark did not always stand there. The ark disappeared after the Babylonian captivity, during the Babylonian captivity. In the days of Yeshua, in the days of the second temple, there was no ark. The synagogue, it is not the ark that makes the synagogue holy. It is called Beit Tehillim, house of prayer. It is prayer that makes the house holy. What made the temple holy? Yeshua himself said it when he was cleansing the Beit HaMikdash. He said, my Father's house shall be called a house of prayer to all nations. It was the prayer that made the temple holy. The prayers that occurred there. What makes your house holy? Prayer. You can have on the doorpost with the mezuzah on the doorpost. That's not what makes it holy. That's telling you to be holy in the sanctuary of your home. It's reminding you that God is your provider and He's with you wherever you go. When you walk into the gate, when you walk out of the gate, and you shall think upon these things and remember. You shall look upon your tzitzit and you shall remember. You shall bind them as a sign upon your arm and as between your eyes. But it is your prayers to Hashem that makes you holy, and it is your prayer to Hashem that makes your house holy. This is why we tell you that the liturgy is important, but the Hitbot Delut is more important. Your personal prayer time, your personal conversation with God is the holiest time of the day for you. The liturgy is simply to lead you to that time, to prepare your heart and your mind. So temple, Beit HaMikdash, the house of holiness. Next. So you will see modern English or American synagogues called Beth Israel over here, which means the house of whatever. By the way, we do not call, they call that going to temple. There's this temple called Temple Beth Israel. Okay, the one here in Harlingen, Temple Beth Israel. We do not call this temple. The reason they call it temple is because they believe that the synagogue has replaced the temple. They do not believe in a third temple. They do not believe in Mashiach coming. They believe in a messianic age or whatever. They believe in symbolism. It's all esoteric. It's all, what's the word I want? The opposite of concrete. It's abstract. It's all abstract because, you see, they've taken on Greek philosophy. They've left behind their Jewish roots, and they've taken to themselves the Western mindset. Why? Because they want to just mix in and disappear for the most part. So you will not see most Reformed Jews wearing kippah outside the synagogue. You will hardly ever see them wearing tzitzit. They don't wear the talit, except for on high holy days. Some of them will, most of them won't, because that's old-fashioned stuff. Very few of them wear the tefillin. So Bet means house of. All right, next. The number of Bet is 2. Go. The gematria of 2. 1 is singular, 2 is plural. So it is plurality, but not only is it plurality, it is, by definition, plurality coming out of singularity. How do you get 2 of something? Before you have 2 of something, you must have 1. Correct? In order to have 2, you must first have 1. So plurality always comes from singularity. And you take the aleph and you add it to the aleph, and now you have, come on, you take aleph and you add aleph, and now you have bet, or 1 plus 1 equals 2. This is saying the same thing as this. This is the Hebrew formula. This is the English formula, or the European formula. This is the Hebrew formula. 1 plus 1 equals 2. Aleph plus aleph equals bet. 1 plus 1 equals 2. It's the same thing. Go. When does singularity become plurality? Aleph. In the beginning, there was God. Nothing else exists. The Ein Sof, the infinite one. But then he made Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum means to make room, to make place for. He made Tzimtzum, and in making Tzimtzum, he came out with the Bet. Here's the word that I was telling you before, Bereshit. Bet, notice the what? Apostrophe. And then the word Reshit. B means in. Reshit means beginning. So this would be spelled Bet Resh Shin Tav. Bereshit. And it begins, the word Bereshit. Listen. So the Torah begins with the letter Bet. In. Why? Because now plurality has happened. The reason Torah begins with Bet is because Bet is 2. Plurality. There's no longer singularity. It's not just God anymore. It's creation. God and creation. And in creation, there are 2 worlds. The upper world and the lower world. There are 2 houses. The upper world, the lower world. The upper world, Shemayim. Bereshit bara Elohim et Shamayim, the heaven, ve'et haaretz, the earth. The heaven and the earth, the upper world and the lower world. Next. Keep. In Kabbalah, Bet is duality. You have a dual nature. We've talked about this many times. You have a dual nature. You have a heavenly nature and an earthly nature. You have a spiritual nature and a physical nature. You have this duality about you. You have in Bet, you have a husband and a wife, and the husband and the wife together produce a child. So Bet is a box, is a cut view of a box. Okay? You have the cut view. This is, if you would picture, this is a box. See, a box. Why a box? It has an opening, but you cannot see past here. Meaning, you have understanding, you have some understanding of this, but you cannot see beyond. You cannot see what's on the other side of the wall. I.e., you cannot see the other world. You cannot see the spirit world. You can see this world, the world below, but you cannot see the world above unless God gives you special vision. As He does from time to time. You do not see how does 2 come from 1? How can 1 equal 2? But out of singularity comes plurality, because you have to have the singularity before you have the plurality. You must have 1 before you have 2. How does that work? Well, it's all in a box. And you can't see through the box. You can only see this here. Next. So the Vav is, we told you that the Vav is the letter 6. And how many are in the Bet? 3. 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals 18, is the same as Chai. The house, the home, equals life. Your home is where your life is. That's the way God intended it to be. Your home is not where your life is not where you work. Your life is not what you do. Your life is your home. That's why we call it your home life. That's why we call, what is the main room of your house called? The living room. Because that's where life happens. It takes 3 to make a good, stable home, a strong home. You take away any one of the 3, and it's incomplete. You see, you take away any one of the 6s, and you no longer have 18. And if you no longer have 18, you no longer have life. Yes, you have a question.
What happened when your kids all move out since you're the wife?
You've already fulfilled your purpose in those regards. It's not that you did not have children, and what we're talking about, this is what's wrong with abortion. You're eliminating life. You're taking away one of the sixes. This is what is wrong with a single parent home. You're taking away one of the sixes. This is why when a husband dies or a wife dies, the other is left feeling incomplete. You've taken away the life. You've taken away the heart. Because God's purpose, and we are all created with us, ingrained within our DNA, it is in you to have this partnership between the husband, the wife, and the child. And anything other than that is incomplete. Now, you look at the world around us today. This is the answer to why we are in the mess that we're in. Because everybody, just about, is feeling these days incomplete. And they're wanting to go out to go find themselves. Well, it's not only that it's in the wrong places. Your purpose in life is not to find yourself. Your purpose in life is to find somebody else and lift them up. That's God's purpose for you. To elevate. Not yourself, others. Yeshua speaks. This is modern day. You talk to rabbis today and they will tell you that your purpose in life is to elevate other people. Yeshua said it. He who wants to be the master must first be the servant. Lift up your brother. Next.
How do we explain, somebody that is single or is a widow, what happens? Because it's a different stage in their life?
Correct. As I told Adan, a lot of it is that you have already fulfilled your mission. There are those, we acknowledge, that God calls to a single life. Rav Shaul speaks of this. Yeshua himself was single. He did not marry. There are those whom God calls to a single life, but the purpose of that person is not for self-aggrandizement, to stay single so that they can enrich themselves or for selfish interest or whatever. It is so that they have more opportunity, more time. Because as Rav Shaul speaks, that the single person does not have to worry, does not have the cares of a wife or a husband and children that they have to worry about. You see, I have to worry about my wife, and she worries about me, and we all worry about the children, and we worry about the grandchildren and such as that. A single person does not have those burdens, as it were, to hold them back. Therefore, they can throw themselves even further into service. So the upper and lower houses of heaven and earth, the spiritual, physical natures of human, we covered that. Next. 2 houses, 2 sticks. Ezekiel 37, verse 15, he says, I saw 2 sticks and they were joined together. The one was the stick, on one was written the house of Judah, on the other was written the house of Ephraim or Manasseh. Now, you will hear a lot of modern day Messianic rabbis say that they don't believe in the 2-stick theory or whatever it is. It's problematic. That statement is problematic. Because it's the prophet Ezekiel who brings about this theory of 2 sticks. And there are Orthodox Jewish rabbis who believe in what is called today in Messianic Judaism, the 2-stick theory. In fact, there is an Avraham, I believe his name is Rabbi Avraham Greenbaum. I'll put his site up on the web, on the Facebook page, his YouTube site, who is a proponent. What is this? What is the two stick? Next. That Israel is divided into two houses, the house of Judah and the house of Israel. Basically, the house of Israel fell first. 2 Kings, the house of Israel fell first, was taken into captivity by the Assyrians. Then the house of Judah fell, was taken into captivity by Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar. The thing is, Judah came back. Most of Israel never came back. They are what are called the lost tribes. Now, there's debate, and you'll hear people say, well, they weren't really lost, and we've always had this, and we've always had these people here. The truth of the matter is that the numbers are much lower. The reason why they're called Jews is from there, that the majority of them are from Yehudah. The Jews literally are from the tribe of Judah. That's why they are called Jews. Yehudim. Are there other tribes mixed in? Yes. But there are also many who were lost. And their descendants are still alive today, and there are many Orthodox rabbis who believe that those among the nations who have a heart and a love for Israel and the Jewish people are actually, in other words, those of the Goyim, those of the Gentile nations, but they have this immense, inexplicable, unexplainable love for Israel and the Jewish people because they are of the lost tribes. These are not messianic rabbis teaching this. In fact, most messianic rabbis hate this theology or whatever teaching. These are Orthodox, raised, taught rabbis who teach this. And in fact, this one rabbi of whom I'm speaking has a message called, Ephraim, where art thou? He's calling to come home. Yes. And now he does not believe in Yeshua, but he's calling for them to, and he warns the other rabbis, be careful with these people. They are special to God. That's why they have the heart that they have. Be careful with these people, lest you be crushing your own, our own people. And he believes that the Messianic movement is the house of Ephraim returning. And there's a whole thing that we can go that Mashiach comes out of Edom, which is Rome. That when Mashiach comes, he comes by way of Rome. What is the greatest church in the world? And where is its headquarters? They've taken him and they disguised him as a Gentile. Even as Yosef was disguised as an Egyptian. Yes, and we call it, that's why we call him Mashiach ben Yosef, Messiah, the son of Joseph. Yes.
In the book of Esther, it explains where in the Jewish dictionary, volume 2, there's a word called Azareth. And this is where the lost tribes went to the land of Azareth, which is in the western hemisphere. Azareth is described as being America.
I don't know so far as that, but they can trace DNA today that starts in Israel, goes up through the Caucasus Mountains, Turkey, up into Russia and across, and disappears. That's where some of my own DNA comes from. So the more they study, and the closer we get to the end, the more they're going to see, they're going to recognize how these tribes are, how these people are still viable. They still have traces of the blood within them. And in the blood, life is in the blood. That's where your DNA is. But even so, the rabbis teach that when a Gentile converts, that God performs a miracle in them anyway, so that they become Jews. That they always were Jews. It's not that they became Jews, but now it is that they always were Jews. And you may not remind a convert that he was at one time a Gentile, because in God's eyes, he never was a Gentile. He's always been a Jew. So you can get into all kinds of cool stuff here. We don't have time. We have to move on. All right, so Joseph is divided into two houses, the tribe of the house of Ephraim and the house of Manasseh. The lost tribes are often called Ephraim. The mixed multitude. You see, the people who came out of Egypt, they were not all sons of Avacham. They were not all sons of Yaakov. There were some, does this sound familiar to you, from every tribe and nation who came out with Israel. So when John sees the people who are followers of Mashiach, he says that there are those from every tongue, tribe, and nation. The mixed multitude. The lost sheep, Yeshua speaks about in Matthew chapter 15, verse 24. Again, we don't have time today to go into all of this. He says that he has another flock in John 10, verse 14 and 15. He says he has another flock. They're not the only ones. There's another flock. Next. Let's go. Okay, that's it. All right, so that's all for today. So class is dismissed. Any questions? Next week we take up Gemel. And Gemel, you have the father, you have the house, you have the family. Gemel represents the Messiah. How the Messiah comes out of the Father. All right? Next week. Shabbat Shalom.